Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over 3 Atlantic storms. We have Invest 91L out in the Gulf of Mexico, Hurricane Larry, which is southeast of Bermuda, and then we have another one out in the eastern Atlantic, and we're also going to be quickly talking about Tropical Depression 15, which is in the eastern Pacific, because that will be impacting some parts of Baja California and also some other areas of western Mexico. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of today's video, just want to say that there will be an upload schedule change because I'm going back to school starting tomorrow. The upload times will be different, of course, because I'm not going to be able to do my usual videos in the morning. So starting tomorrow in weekday videos, my uploads will probably be around. And again, this isn't exact at all. Of course, some days I'll have half days on some holidays, and then of course holidays and weekends I won't be at school, so I'll of course be able to do the regular morning ones. So it's gonna be not really set in stone, but for most Monday through Friday videos, they'll be uploaded around 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern time, 3 to 5 Central time, 2 to 4 Mountain time, and 1 to 3 Pacific time. So I'm trying to kind of schedule it out so that I can see when I would actually be able to do it. Of course, I'm gonna be kind of restricted on when I'll be able to do it. So hopefully this works for you guys. It will be a bit of a change, especially considering that for the past while I've been doing them in the morning, but now I'm going back to doing them in the afternoon, at least for the weekdays, and then of course on the weekends and on holidays I'll have a different schedule where it'll probably be somewhat like what I've been doing for the past couple months. So let's get right into the video, and let's start off with your current National Weather Service page. You can see that we have some air quality alerts in effect for the Northwest and the Rockies. We have some red flag warnings for a little bit of Idaho and Montana, as well as some heat advisories in effect for California. We have excessive heat warnings in effect for a little bit of Arizona, Utah, Nevada, and California. And then we have some excessive heat watches for a little bit of Arizona, and I believe that's near Phoenix, or at least some of the suburbs of Phoenix, where they have that excessive heat watch in effect. We also have flood watches for a little bit of the panhandle of Florida, and then another area in parts of Pennsylvania, New York, and New Jersey. Yesterday, we had a high temperature of 122 degrees in Death Valley, California, with a low temperature of 17 degrees in Peter Sinks, Utah. The highest rainfall report was in Sulphur Springs, Texas, where they got 2.97 inches of rain, and there were no snowfall reports yesterday. So here's a look at the eastern Pacific. This is going to be what we start off with, because we do have one disturbance which is going to be making a pass near Baja California, and I just want to touch on that for those of you who live there. We have two disturbances. We have, of course, 15E, which is right over here. It's a tropical depression as of now. And then we have Disturbance 1, which has a 20% chance of developing within the next 5 days. So if we look at Tropical Depression 15, which would be named Olaf if it were to develop, you can see it's located at 18.7 degrees north by 107.3 degrees west, maximum winds of about 40 miles per hour, minimum pressure 1,005 millibars. It is fairly well developed on the satellite imagery right now. If we look at the key messages for this system, you can see that the first one says Tropical Depression 15E is expected to strengthen to a tropical storm later today, and it could become a short-lived hurricane while it passes just to the southwest of southern portions of Baja California Sur Thursday and Friday. Tropical storm watch is in effect for portions of Baja California Sur, and interest in these areas should continue to monitor the progress of this depression. And then the second one says heavy rains associated with Tropical Depression 15E are possible across portions of Baja California Sur Thursday through Friday. This will pose a threat of flash flooding and mudslides, because there is a little bit of elevation difference within Baja California in that area, and also into western Mexico in general. So any amount of rainfall can cause some mudslide issues. If we look at the forecasted cone track from the National Hurricane Center, you can see that we have a tropical storm expected to develop over the next few hours. We have that tropical storm watch in effect for parts of Baja California Sur, and then we have this expected to become maybe a brief hurricane, maybe a brief Category 1, as it's passing by, and then eventually, as it curves out to sea, it should become a tropical storm, and then eventually a tropical depression. Here's a look at the chances of wind speeds reaching tropical storm force, which is 39 miles per hour. You can see that for the very southern tip of Baja California Sur, we have a little bit of 20 to 40% chance of seeing tropical storm force winds. But again, I don't think this is going to be a huge event. I just wanted to touch on this, usually because we don't talk about the Pacific too much, and we don't talk about the weather events down in Mexico or even along the West Coast too much, mainly because there isn't too much weather going on for most of the summer in the area, except for heat waves and things like that. So usually we don't have a lot to talk about, so I just want to kind of cover that for those of you who live along that West Coast area. Let's go over to the Atlantic now, where we have three storms. We have Invest 91L. You can see that has a 50% chance of developing within the next 2 days and within the next 5 days. It's expected to cross over parts of northern Florida, then eventually into southern Georgia, coastal South Carolina, and then eventually out into the Atlantic. It'll be a fairly weak system as it's crossing over here. So even though it looks dangerous and menacing when you see it in that cone, I don't think it'll be a huge issue for those areas. It might develop as it's offshore, but again, that's when it's offshore. It won't be impacting land by that point. Then we have Hurricane Larry, which is still fairly strong. We have winds of about 115 miles per hour with Larry, and then we have Disturbance 2, which has a 20% chance of developing within the next 5 days. And you can see that over parts of Western Africa and just offshore of Western Africa right now, that has a 20% chance of developing within the next 5 days. So here's Hurricane Larry on the satellite imagery. You can see it's located at 27 degrees north by 57.7 degrees west. Maximum winds, same as yesterday, still at 115 miles per hour. Minimum pressure went up a little bit. I believe yesterday it was at 963. I could be mistaken there, but it was in the low to mid 960s. Now we're at 966. Not really a big change there. And it's moving pretty much exactly the same as yesterday, northwest at about 10 miles per hour. So not a lot has changed with this storm so far. Sea surface temperatures will be drastically going down in this area. So it's now in kind of the warmer part of its track, but once you get, I would say, parallel of Delaware and above, that's when you're going to start to get into some of the cooler sea surface temperatures, and that should be when most of the weakening occurs. But it still will probably be able to maintain some tropical storm strength all the way up to maybe Greenland and Iceland, which we'll talk about in just a minute. Key messages for the storm. The first one says large swells generated by Larry will continue to affect the Leeward Islands, portions of the Greater Antilles, and the Bahamas today. Significant swells will begin to reach the east coast of the United States and Atlantic Canada later today and continue affecting these shores through the end of the week. So again, beach weather not going to be the greatest for these areas, but I still think you can probably go on the beach as long as you take a little bit of caution. Just watch out for rip currents, and I would say probably wait for there to be a lifeguard at whatever beach you're going to, just to be extra safe, because when you have a storm out in the Atlantic, it can cause some issues with that. And then it says these swells will likely cause life-threatening surf and rip current conditions, and beachgoers and other interests along these coasts are urged to follow the guidance of lifeguards and local officials this week. Second one says the center of Larry's forecast passed east of Bermuda on Thursday, but given Larry's large size, tropical storm conditions are possible there Thursday, along with the risk of heavy rainfall and coastal flooding. A tropical storm watch is in effect for Bermuda, and interest there should closely monitor the latest updates. And then the final one says Larry's forecast move near or over portions of southeastern Newfoundland late the Friday and Friday night as it transitions to a hurricane force post-tropical cyclone. There's a risk of impacts from high winds, rainfall, and storm surge in portions of Newfoundland, and interest there should monitor the progress of Larry. So if we look at the track of this, and we're going to look at it over the next 3 days because it kind of gives you a better view, and then eventually we'll look at the 5-day forecast. But here's the 3-day cone. You can see Bermuda's right down here with those tropical storm watches. So here's Bermuda, and you can see that this is going to pass to the east of there, but look at how wide the tropical storm force wind graph is. So you can see that even if the center passes to the east of Bermuda, most likely at least the eastern half of the island will be dealing with some tropical storm force winds out of this. It doesn't look like hurricane conditions are expected, but definitely tropical storm force winds are a possibility. And again, if you were to kind of extrapolate that and we were to look at the size of the wind field, even though it would probably get smaller with time, you're looking at probably some parts of Newfoundland getting clipped. Who knows, maybe even coastal Nova Scotia, although that is a little bit less likely. And it's expected to maintain this hurricane strength all throughout that time frame. So it's a fairly strong storm, and right now it's at, I believe, category 3 strength. So, or category high, it's either high category 2 or a low category 3. So it's a fairly strong storm at this point. So even if it weakens to a category 1, it's still going to be within that hurricane strength force. So you're still dealing with a fairly big storm that you have to kind of contend with and you have to prepare for. If we look at the 5-day outlook to kind of extend that, so you can see that it's heading to Bermuda around Thursday afternoon, and then by say Friday night into Saturday morning, it's near Newfoundland, and then by Sunday morning, it's already up near southern Greenland, and then eventually into central Greenland and parallel with Iceland as we get to Monday morning. So it's going to quickly speed up to the northeast, and you can see it's still tropical storm force conditions through that area, even into central Greenland and Iceland, where the water temperatures are fairly cold. They're still probably above freezing. I haven't checked for that area, but I'm assuming they're probably above freezing, but probably just barely. I'll say you're looking at 1 to 3 degrees Celsius water temperatures in that area. So really, really chilly for a storm. And it's actually quite impressive that it's probably still maintaining that tropical storm force through that area, even if it's that far to the north. If you look at the chances of the tropical storm force winds and when they're most likely, again, you can see that tropical storm force winds will probably first arrive and are most likely to arrive by Thursday morning in Bermuda, then eventually along, again, some parts of coastal Nova Scotia. They have a chance of getting in on some of that, on some of the tropical storm force winds, but mainly for eastern Newfoundland, where you have the highest chance, and that would be for Friday afternoon mostly. If we look at the chances or the cyclone intensity guidance, you can see, again, it's right on the border between a category 3 and a category 2. It's going to weaken a little bit, so it'll stay mid-category 2 up until Bermuda, and then once it passes there into the much cooler waters of the North Atlantic, it'll probably go down to category 1 and then eventually tropical storm status, and then who knows, could dip down to tropical depression status, but by that point, it's already going to be up near Iceland, so it wouldn't even be a big storm anyways. Even if it is a tropical storm, as it's moving up near Iceland, even if it's technically a tropical storm, it'll be very, very weak, so I don't think it'll have too big of an impact even up into that area. If you look at Invest 91L, located at 27.2 degrees north by 88.4 degrees west, maximum winds of 25 miles per hour, minimum pressure of 1,011 millibars. You can see here is the satellite imagery of the storm. It's located south of, I would say, right in between Alabama and Mississippi, and right around that border. You can see it's right here. It's still mainly just a cluster of thunderstorms, and it's nothing too strong. I would say it's more of a rain event for these areas than a wind event. You're only looking at maximum winds within the cyclone right now at 25 miles per hour. Even if it strengthens a little bit, let's say it's 30 or 35 miles per hour at the center of the storm as it's crossing North Florida and southern Georgia, it's not really going to be too noticeable, I would say. So the wind's not going to be the big issue, but some of the rainfall may cause some issues. The only good news or silver lining that you could take from this is that we're looking at Louisiana, Mississippi, this area that was really hard hit with Ida, not getting too much rainfall out of this, maybe half an inch at most. So the recovery efforts will still be good. And it looks like after this, you're not looking at many other storms either. So they got that abundant amount of rainfall, way too much rainfall, but they got it. And now, luckily, after that, they didn't see too much in the way of extra rainfall added on. So that's at least some good news out of that. If we look at the track of the system, you can see that it's going to move most likely over North Florida or maybe even into southern Georgia, then move out to sea, and then probably it'll move north of Bermuda, which is down here, and kind of just move right in between. Who knows? We could see another pass near eastern Newfoundland as a very weak system by that point. So maybe a little bit of rain for that area, but again, nothing too intense for those regions. If we look at the intensity guidance, the majority of the models have this as a tropical depression level winds, or maybe even tropical storm force if it gets organized enough, and then very quickly dips down again into tropical depression and post-tropical cyclone status. If you look at the total rainfall, because this I think the rainfall will probably be the bigger deal out of this. We're looking at, in that dark blue, half an inch to 3/4 of an inch. In that lighter blue, 3/4 of an inch to about an inch and a half. In the purple, an inch and a half to, I would say, 2 or 2.5 inches of rain. In the red and orange colors, that's where you're above 2.5 inches of rainfall. So you're looking at mainly for the Panhandle of Florida, and especially around that Big Bend area where Florida kind of juts out into the Gulf of Mexico. That's where you're dealing with the majority of the rainfall. And again, good news, over the next 3 days, we're not looking at too much rainfall for that area that was impacted by Ida. We're looking at maybe a tenth of an inch to half an inch, depending on how close to the shoreline you are. But again, it looks like this is going to be mostly a rain event. I'm not expecting anything to a tropical like out of this, even though technically they might put this up as a tropical depression or even a weak tropical storm. But again, I don't think this is going to be a big deal for those areas. Now, again, just to remind you guys, if you weren't there for the beginning of the video, schedule change starting tomorrow because of school. I will be posting on the weekdays from Monday through Friday. For most weeks, of course, holidays, I'll probably go back to the normal morning upload times. But for most weekdays during the year, I'll have my uploads delayed because, of course, I'm going to be at school for the majority of the day, and then when I come home, I'll be able to make the video. So 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern time for those areas is when I'll probably have my videos uploaded by. That's 3 to 5 Central Time, 2 to 4 Mountain Time, 1 to 3 Pacific Time. And again, holidays and weekends will probably have the regular morning upload time, and I'll tell you guys if there's any changes in the schedule. So that's just something that I want to tell you guys, because there will be a fairly big jump in when I usually make these videos from around 11 a.m. Eastern time, and now they're going to be pushed all the way to maybe 4, 5, or 6 p.m. Eastern time. So that's that's a fairly big jump. That's almost like 7 hours between when I would do them now and when I'll be doing them starting tomorrow. So I just want to let you guys know, if you don't see an upload for tomorrow morning, it's not because I'm not making one. It's just because I'll be at school at that time. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.